there is a plethora of information amongst it all. You chuck out a whole heap of stuff and then say, and some of these concepts we're going to be explaining in great detail. But you right? Okay. Yeah, Luke, so when we sort of going out there today, I just want you to, I'm going to put some concepts up on this board here, just so you can actually hold those thoughts in your mind when we're doing the work, so you can start to see the relativity of it. And of course, putting value and meaning on what you're doing means that, you know, you've obviously got to go slow and be relaxed and composed and so forth. But it's all about changing behaviour, so people's behaviour. So obviously that's why most people are doing what they're doing. They come to us because they want to make a change. The other side of that is that they're wanting to have some control. You know, I want to control my fat cells, I want to control the pain, my anxiety and so forth. So they're basically, if you look at the person, there's a 3D image of every single thing they've engaged in since the day they were born. So all their beliefs, their perceptions, their desires, all those type of things, competing with the Joneses, whatever it is, has got them to this point. Mm-hmm. And you know, of course we know the definition of stupidity, keep doing the same thing but expect a different result. So obviously we've got to change things. So if we look at their present behaviour, and to do this we draw a sink that has two bowls in it. Okay, so that's pretty easy to imagine. Mm-hmm. And inside one of these bowls we have a ball, and we're looking at this as this part here. This is their present behaviour. This is the person themselves when they come into us. Now, if you look at the ball rolling around inside this sink, okay, now if you imagine you can get in there and you can tweak this ball and you can play with it and you can spin it off in all different directions and demonstrate lots and lots of skills as to what you can do with this ball. But the moment you stop messing with it, it ends up back here. That's the attractor, right? Yep. Now attractors is what people's behaviours are. They have, you know, main attractors that control arms and legs, but inside that there's a whole heap of small attractors that govern their behaviour. The cigarette they just lit, the alcohol they just put to their mouth, the thought they just had. They're all attractors where energy gets diverted to certain areas and then the behaviour gets elicited. So we go to counsellors and we go to therapists and all that sort of thing. What the therapist basically does is play with this ball. Flicks it around the place, very skillful, doing all sorts of wonderful things with it. But of course the moment they stop, bang, back to the attractor. Okay, so this is the desirable landscape. This is the more desirable one over here. So we need to be over there. So that's got the better parts of what we're trying to achieve. So to get this ball out of here into there, something has to happen to this system as a whole, inclusive of the sink that it's involved in, that the ball is flying around in. So to do that, we've got to get some energy and information, which is entangled with one another, into this. So somehow it's got to stir that up until this ball can build up enough escape velocity to be able to jump out of there and land into here. Okay, can you picture that?
Yep.
Right, so now we've had a change of behaviour. And all these things I'm talking about, these are things, events that you're actually going to see take place within your body, in the dynamics that's taking place in your body as you're going through these movements. Right, so you can see that when we first hop you in that machine, we'll see what that ball looks like floating around that place. Now those initial conditions is what we call that, those initial conditions, they describe every single thing about you, how you're interacting with your environment. We don't know what your perceptions are, but it shows the effect of having those perceptions shows up in those dynamics. So all the things that you're trying to escape from or improve upon, it all shows up in those initial conditions. So obviously that's got to change. That's got to look different. So when we perturb this system, so that's the word we're sort of looking for. So stir it up a bit. Yep. We stir it up, it gets this escape velocity and it lands into here. Now that's good. So this is typically what our program, 1 and 2 will do. All the things that we're going to go through over the next 12 days or so. Mm-hmm. We're into this sink here. So that's good. We're happy now, we're floating around in here and that's a better place to be. But it doesn't really matter because sometimes if something else come along, it could jump us back into here. If we go outside and we're not robust in this area, so we need to make this robust. So what we've actually got to do then is change the shape of this. So if we went, what would I have to do to this sink to change the dimensions of it so it becomes more robust, so it's harder for the ball to go out? Well, obviously, if we made the sink deeper than the ball's here, it's a lot harder to jump it out. You're right?
Yep.
Correct that?
Yep.
Okay, so that would be our program 3 plus 4 plus 5. Builds that robustness in. So we strengthen the commitment of the system to stay in that space by, you know, in the way we increase the load, the way we manipulate things and so forth. So now we've got this ball in here, yep, it's robust, but it doesn't have many degrees of freedom. It's not creative enough, it's pretty boring in there. Right. Can only do certain things, right? So, well, that's not desirable either. It's fairly robust, it doesn't perhaps have the disease and disorder it had before, but it's not really, you know, going, like I said, it's boring. So what do we need to do? We need to change the shape of that again, so that we've got a system where the balls have got lots of degrees of freedom, but same thing, can't get chucked out of there. So to do that, we got it's more like a wok now, a really big wok. So this is the shape. So we've got our ball flying around in here now. So now, as you can see, it's got lots of playing room, lots of degrees of freedom, quite creative, move around freely in this space. And it's actually robust because with something of this dimension, you know, something might come along and hit it, and it might jump over to here, but it's still in there. Yep. It's still in that space. Another hit, boom, so it gets back in there, so it's still in this landscape. So that's what our program 6 and 7 do. Okay, so there's actual purpose. Every single thing we do has this value. And when you're on program 6 and 7, you're doing those 1 sets of 30, super slow, all that type of thing, you know, we're clearing out more and more noise and building this nice platform for these balls to roll around in. So that's the sort of state we're in. And from there, we can then go on and add a whole heap of programs, advanced programs, and you're very robust. No matter what we throw at you, your system will deal with it, get back on track really quickly. So that's the plan, rightio. So we've got all that. Now, this needs something else to inspire us a little bit more, okay? So we're gonna look at it now from some of the dynamics. So what's actually taking place out there for you is when we're engaging with this exercise, your system doesn't know that you're in some type of gym doing weights, it's just having a sensory experience. So we're looking at how nested you are in your environment. So it perceives the stress or the weight that you've got on you. So what we see, we've got information coming in and then we're responding to it. So sensory motor response. So first we need information come in, and every single thing we see you do, move, twink your eye, all that type of thing, that's the response. Right. Okay? So something has come in and you've responded to it. That's how it works. Yep. Okay? So with this, so you're in a leg press and you're doing the leg press initially. So remember those initial conditions we spoke about? We're going to see certain dynamics, we're going to see certain neurological responses to that. So we might say you've got a system now where you've got, you know, let's just put a mathematical value on it. We've got 30 something coming into the system, 30 bits of information, energy and information coming in, and we've got 30 coming back out. Pretty boring. It's almost like, you know, we can sort of see, well, that stimulus is really relative to what we're sort of seeing there. You know, there's not much really happening there. Bit of tremor, no big deal. Okay, so, but that's not good. That's that sink. That's the bowl. It's not good. We need to be somewhere else. Obviously, something about that tremor's got to change. If we're going to change the system, change the behaviour of that tremor's got to change as well. So what I discovered many years ago was the fact that during this process of going slow and the person relaxing and just sort of staying out of it and just allowing their system to do what it needs to do, it continually looks at upgrading its responses. So it takes these bits of information coming in and it enhances it. So as it's coming in, what we see and then is it starts to bifurcate. So these are bifurcations. All right, now, so that's increased the mathematical value of that system straight away. So now, then it starts to do it again. Right? So all the time, increasing in complexity. The key issues here. Disease and disorder is a loss of the system's complexity, so we need to get that complexity back. So then they start branching off themselves in all different directions. Now this involves neurons. This we're talking about here is that neurons, neural nets, neural landscapes. X amount of neurons were dealing with that information coming in. Now many, many more neurons are going to do. So guess what happens then, what the sensation is for you as the participant? It feels a lot harder to do. Why is it harder? Because it's costing more energy. What is that energy cost associated to? The processing of so much more information. All right? So, and we can keep drawing these nice little trees and branches and all that sort of thing, and that's precisely what happens. So then if we take a mathematical measurement of that, so now we've got 3,000 bits of information being processed per second. Per 30 bits per second before, now we've got 3,000 bits per second. Now that's coming in. Now the same thing happens on the way back. So that's information coming in. So the motor responses to that are also obviously going to have bifurcations. Are you getting the picture?
Yep.
Rightio. How do we know that? Well, your behaviour of your system has changed. Before, when we first started, it was just doing little bits of this. Now it's doing big movements. Travelling up and down the same space, the stimulus hasn't changed. We haven't added any more weight. It's exactly the same stimulus, but your responses to that are so much more creative. Okay? Now, the disease and disorder that was in a person's system, it needs this measurement to keep itself there. Yep. It can't live in this measurement. It's like having a tree that was growing in the desert and then putting that tree in the rainforest. It's going to die of overstimulation. Right? That's exactly what it does. Too much information. All right? Likewise, you reverse that and put a tree from the rainforest into the desert, it would die of understimulation. So you put that into context with what human beings do to themselves. Die of overstimulation because too much information, internets, long periods of time, and then other people dying of understimulation because they're in closed rooms, they're sitting in different things, they're not out in the environment, they're not playing it up all the time. Okay? That has a dampening effect on a system, or it's too much energy and information is trying to travel along these very narrow conduits into the system, and they shut down. And the person gets less and less ability to cope with the environment. Okay, so all these things are very explainable and very visual because we can actually see it happening. That's what's so beautiful about this stuff. We can watch the events take place, and all I've really learned to do is put value and meaning on what those dynamics mean. Mm-hmm. And so we look at chaos theory and we look at complexity and sciences and systems biology and all that type of thing, and it perfectly helps explain these dynamics. We can take those measurements, we can see what healthy dynamics look like. What this would look like on a time series, you would sort of see massive amounts of frequency, like that, just noisy, right? So let's just say we took 30 seconds over a 30-second period. Now we got that data and we put it downloaded it and put it into Excel, and we might find that that bit of data over that 30 seconds has a megabyte file. The file might be something like 10 megabytes. However, over time, the same person, same stimulus, nothing's actually changed in the environment. So instead of that, now we've got this happening. Lots of variability over time, all right? So we go same 30 seconds. We download that into Excel. Now we've got a 60 megabyte file because there's so much more information in that. Bifurcation, right? But what's important about this is the self-similar properties about it. You could criticize, say, oh, that's not exactly the same. But when you actually look at it, you see similarities. This is amplitude, this is frequency. So we see that it follows a non-linear path with lots of variability over time. That's what arrhythmia, if your heart was doing that, that's arrhythmia. All right, so we need things to be doing this. And unfortunately, a lot of elite athletes that test and we do it, we see much more of this than what we see of that. Okay, they've trained so hard that they're actually too much input, so the system starts to shut down. It starts to desensitize to things, and things start going wrong. They feel something's wrong, so they train harder and worsens it all the time.
That's what I do.
Okay, so does that help put that picture in your mind?
Yeah,
so if you're thinking about this when we're out there doing things, you think about, I can see those bifurcations, I've got my system in this state, It's not really doing it. All of a sudden something changed. That's a bifurcation. The behaviour has changed.
Yep.
All right? But remember, things that we're trying to escape, our anxiety, our fears, our disease, disorder, it needs that as initial conditions to survive. We perturb it, put it in this chaotic state. It might not make sense for a little bit, but as it starts to settle, so what we call this is destabilising these initial conditions. Right? So that basically, you look at it, or they're decomposing. Those initial conditions are decomposing. So we've got to decompose it, which means at certain times things might not be going right. So we've got to break symmetry, let the system rest for a bit, run back on the field, and then we run back on. We've had a bit of a coaching from the sideline. We run back on the field. Now we've got more contrast. Now we know what to do more. So that's how it happens. All right. So once it's up into this area up here, so I've had to explain. It was reverse engineering. People were getting well. We were doing this stuff. Didn't even know how it worked. Right? Just like, yeah, mate, come and sit in here, do this, and it just appeared, and I eliminated a whole heap of things and developed this program based around what I seen was the best, how to get the best result out of this stuff. And only because of the other pressures, of course, of people criticising what we were doing, is that I started to say, okay, I've got to have some solutions to this. I've got to be able to tell people what it is. And of course, there was nothing in the text to describe that stuff. Yeah. So it wasn't until I started to learn more about chaos theory and I seen the terms of the bifurcations, and explain what a bifurcation was. And, that's what I'm seeing in these people, self-organising. The system itself, the person staying out of it and letting the system just self-organise up to these higher states of complexity. The moment they start to get involved with it and start to try to help, that's when it gets messy. So it shows how corrupt our thoughts are, no matter how how well-meaning they might be, how they have an impact on the function of the system. So we've got to get out of this thinking state and just let the system sort it out. So, like I said, it was all a journey. So it was this whole reverse engineering of something that happened. We weren't, I wasn't a scientist out there trying to arrange some experiment to prove some aspect of chaos theory or complexity. It was just this phenomenon was happening. And what do we say? It's 100% of the time in 100% of the people. That's how fundamental it is. Okay? Inescapable.
Yep.
It's as fundamental as electricity. If I go and fray the end of a lead, plug that lead in and get you to hang on to that thing, you're going to get electrocuted. It's as fundamental as that. All right.
All right.
All righty.
Let's get electrocuted.